Welcome. In this video I'm going to take a brief look at Metrorunner, the upcoming board game designed by Stephen Kerr and published by Thunderworks Games. It's a 1 to 5 player competitive game set in the future dystopia of Mirror City. When I saw the announcement for this game, I was immediately intrigued because I love the cyberpunk theme, and of course Thunderworks Games has a track record of excellent gameplay. So I reached out to them hoping to learn more. They were super helpful and gave me a ton of information, so I've started making a how to play video. Unfortunately, that won't be ready until well after the Kickstarter campaign is finished. But as usual, I aim to release it before the game delivers. Perhaps if I spent less time messing around with motion graphics, my videos wouldn't take so long. But in the meantime, I thought I'd create this video to highlight just a few of the features which I'm most excited for. And by a few, I mean 5, which is half the daily recommended intake of YouTube lists. A couple of quick disclaimers though. Firstly, these opinions and preferences are my own, and I hope they provide even a little help in deciding whether the game interests you. None of my videos are sponsored, and the fact that I really like this game is actually super inconvenient, because this video is probably going to make me look like a complete shill. Also, I've been told that everything here is subject to change, which made me laugh because the game already seems more polished than a number of delivered games, which shall remain nameless. The art and theming are wonderful, but don't let those vibrant colours fool you. This is a world run by mega corporations, so power hungry and morally bankrupt they make present day capitalism look like a hippie commune. You'll take on the role of a streetwise runner, trying to grift, steal and hack your way to a less desperate and impoverished life, or at least rise above the competition. There are a number of different mechanisms in play, which are individually straightforward, but they interconnect in interesting ways. I won't cover them all here, I'll save that for the how to play video, but let's look at job cards, which are central to the game. As you might expect, these represent the various gigs you'll choose to undertake. Most of them involve making your way to one of the 5 city districts, and then spending coloured resource cubes to complete the job. If you were hoping to play the role of a chivalrous do-gooder, then I'm afraid you've boarded entirely the wrong train. Although some of the jobs are quite altruistic, I was genuinely surprised at some of the lawless and immoral jobs you'll be pursuing. I won't spoil more of the job cards because they're so much fun to discover on your own. Completing a job card gets you a slew of rewards, such as credits, notoriety or influence. You'll also tuck every completed job card underneath your player board, which will give you even more rewards. And some job cards have a special ability at the very bottom, which will benefit you for the rest of the game. Not to mention the victory points you'll get at the end of the game. If the job's district has a little cache of resource cubes at the time, I get to take those too. So yeah, the game is not stingy with rewards. There's a lot more I could say about jobs, but this is supposed to be just a whirlwind tour of some highlights, so let's move on. I like the way your character becomes more powerful over the course of the game. Climbing the influence track unlocks advanced hacking abilities, and climbing the notoriety track boosts your ability to gather resources. And as I mentioned, tucking a completed job card under your player board will sometimes give you an ongoing effect. Some of those abilities even synergize with each other. The power escalation isn't so steep that you get a runaway feedback loop, but it's enough for you to really feel that nanotechnology coursing through your veins. Okay, you won't find any reference to asset burn in the actual game, because it's just my term for a number of rules which share a common theme, namely repurposing the assets you collect in order to exert yourself and get more done on your turn. We've already met job cards, and we know that their main purpose is to shower you with rewards, if you manage to complete the gig. And we've met the coloured resource cubes. Their main role is to pay the cost of completing jobs. But both of these components can be repurposed. For example, at the start of each turn, you'll move your runner 1 or 2 spaces forward on the metro line. But sometimes you'll really want to move just a bit further, say to reach the next district before some other lowlife makes off with its cache of resources. In this situation, you can sacrifice one of your job cards, or some of your resource cubes, to travel a bit further. A similar but even better example of asset burn is when you're about to complete a job, and you need to pay the resource cubes listed on the card. If you're short by just 1 cube, you can sacrifice one of the other job cards in your hand to cover the missing cube. Of course, burning one of your other job cards is quite a trade-off, but it's a great mechanic because it opens up interesting choices and possibilities you wouldn't otherwise have. It can also save you from getting hamstrung by not having a resource cube, which might otherwise be quite difficult to obtain. You can also burn assets when hacking the network, and we'll look more closely at that in a moment. Asset burn leads to some great decisions, and it seems pretty thematic to me as well. It feels like you're racing around the city, exerting yourself and burning bridges to close deals and gain an edge over the competition. In a one-player game, you'll be playing against a fully featured AI bot. The fact that this game includes a deck of 20 AI cards and a couple of rogue AI tokens tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the designers have taken the solo mode. In a nutshell, the AI will simulate the sort of mildly infuriating behaviour you'd get from another player. It will travel around the metro line, plunder the job offer, mess with the network, and so on. I like the way the AI is very quick and easy to run, but it's not completely random. It's smart enough to adjust its behaviour depending on who's further ahead on the notoriety track. Another feature I love is hacking the network, the minigame in the centre of the board. It's not the game's central mechanic, and it's never compulsory, but I think that the richness and depth of this puzzle is a good reflection of the excellent design you'll find throughout the game. So I'm going to dig a bit deeper with an example. Let's imagine a grossly simplified version of this puzzle with a 2x2 grid of these tiles called panop tiles. There's no such puzzle in the actual game, and you may be thinking, what's that going to prove? Indulge me. Your goal is to manipulate the tiles so that they form a connection between these two green dots, called nodes. Let's say that each time you manipulate the tiles, you can either rotate a tile 90 degrees, like this, or swap any two adjacent tiles, like this. So here's a question. Starting from this arrangement, can you see a way to connect the two green nodes? How many manipulations would it take you? Maybe pause the video and see what solution you come up with. Go on, I dare you. Okay, are we back? Good. Now, the first thing I'll point out is that there are no wrong answers. If you manage to connect the nodes using, say, 3 or 4 manipulations, then congratulations, you hacked the network and you'll be well rewarded. But completing the hack with fewer manipulations is even better, because then you won't have to spend a bunch of your precious resources on performing so many manipulations. In this example, it's possible to connect the nodes with just 2 manipulations. For example, I could swap these 2 adjacent tiles and then rotate this one. The other thing I should quickly clarify is that in the actual game, hacking the network is so much deeper and richer than this simplified example. Let's take a peek at what the real game has in store for you. To make my simple example resemble the real game, we'll need to extend the tile grid to 3x3 and include a tile which has no connecting lines at all. We'll also add another manipulation technique in addition to the 2 we already looked at. You can choose any row or column and shift all those tiles in either direction so that they wrap around, like this. Things are getting more interesting, but we're not done yet. Let's add a character card, which has some special manipulation technique which only you can use once per hack. We'll also add a new component called a brute force tile. If you've managed to acquire one, you can place it on top of one of the panop tiles to temporarily improve the network. And finally, let's add a network card, which illustrates the positions of the nodes you're trying to connect. At the start of the game, you'll be trying to connect just 2 nodes, like we did in our example. But by the end of the game, you'll have the option of connecting up to 4 nodes to each other. Or at least you can try, if you're brave enough. Oh yeah, and did I mention that you always have 2 network cards to choose from? Okay, all that may seem like a lot, especially when you're casually watching a YouTube video. But in practice, you only have to dig in as deep as you're comfortable with. I think it's impressive that the designers have created a puzzle which is so scalable. Young or inexperienced players can start hacking networks right away. It may take them a few extra manipulations, which they'll have to pay for, but a successful hack still feels satisfying and rewarding. At the same time, experienced players could play this game for years and still have room to improve their hacking skills. Another thing I like about the entire hacking puzzle is that all the information is visible right there in the centre of the board. So while you're waiting for other players to take their turns, you can think about whether you might want to try hacking it, and how. Of course, there's always the risk that another player will change the network before you get the chance, but that's also part of the fun. This is just a guess, but if you have players who are prone to analysis paralysis, then you might want to consider introducing a time limit. Hacking isn't especially slow, but it can seem that way because the game's other actions are so fast. Of course, if you want to get really thinky and deep into hacking, then solo mode has you covered. And that's it for this sneak peek at the game. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the How to Play video later this year. Happy gaming!